The swarm disaster is by far the most confusing piece of lore we have at this moment. There are many events going on at the same time, and almost everything is written very vague and surreal. The story behind the swarm disaster is actually not that complicated, but what makes it so incredibly hard to understand is that there are two different layers to this whole story. The surface level are things that actually physically happened during the birth, rise, and fall of Tazeron the propagation. The deeper layer is that everything that happened the way it happened because there were a lot of aeons pulling a lot of strings behind the scenes. Some of the story bits aren't even things that happened, but are just a vague way to describe what an aeon was doing at a certain time. To better understand the story, we will dive into the surface level of things before we dive deeper. That way, the plot becomes a lot easier to wrap our heads around. The Lepesmet star system was discovered by a leader of a great cosmic civilization. He had always managed to succeed, even when faced with impossible odds, and fueled by his own hubris, he wanted to conquer Lepesmet and create a new civilization there, just like he had always done with uncivilized star systems. His goal, however, was to discover his true self, because no matter how many planets he conquered or what he did, he always felt something was off. The leader was a believer of the Whispers of Terminus, the Aeon of Finality. Since Terminus Whispers travel backwards through time, he wanted to use them to decide on his next course of action. However, there was one problem. The captain suffered from long-term memory loss, so he hired a navigator capable of deciphering Terminus's whispers, as well as reminding him of the meaning every so often. The whispers the navigator managed to decipher were: he conquers planets, he establishes civilizations, he finds his lost self. So, driven by the promise of finally finding his lost self, he set off towards Lepesmet. When they arrived there, they started the systematic slaughter of the insects that lived there. Not only to clear space for a new civilization, but also to study insects to better understand the different species and inner workings of the swarm. Eventually, the destruction of the insects and construction of the new civilization were complete, and so Elideknen was born. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a group of bounty hunters was led by a captain, who, after having some nightmarish visions, insisted on embarking on an insect hunt on Lepesmet as well. And when they arrived there, they started their hunt by gathering information first. However, everything went south really quickly, as the insect dust and nightmare visions slowly drove the hunters insane. Soon, the hunters wouldn't know who was insect or human anymore, or friend or foe, and they would start recklessly attacking anything in sight. This is when the Elideknen government caught on, and got into conflict with the bounty hunters. The Elideknen army sent out their insects and human soldiers alike, and the bounty hunters and wild insects clashed with them all. During this chaotic war, the insects had to multiply really fast to survive, and eventually, the very last member of the insect species of the Coleoptera took flight to escape the war, and due to its hatred and loneliness, it transformed into Tazeronth, the Aeon of Propagation. After this, Tazeronth multiplied extremely fast, and when they were ready, spread out across the universe, consuming everything in their path. At this point, the Aeon of Veracity Ouroboros had to defend their path, since Tazeronth had been consuming so much, they started to consume the path of Veracity as well. So, the war between the Veracity and Propagation began, which was absolutely devastating for the universe. The war affected 2/3 of all living worlds and created unprecedented chaos. During this entire conflict, Elideknen fell and was reduced to a wasteland. As for the surviving bounty hunters, they retreated and quit being bounty hunters so they could take a normal job or just traveled around. Somewhere else in the universe when the war started, a group of masked fools were trying to create tinctures out of insects, but they were interrupted by a ripple in their goblet. They came to the conclusion that Aha wanted them to assist the Aeons in the war. So they stole a gondola from the morning actors, and they went on a wild ride across the universe, picking up travelers from all worlds and factions, although the masked fools themselves eventually disappeared. At a certain point, the gondola accidentally wound up in the hallway of the memory zone, and a memo keeper asked them to bring a special memory bubble with them. This memory bubble contained a shadow, a memory born from nothing. After that, the gondola got caught up in a cloud of insect wing powder, and during the chaos, a nameless accidentally hit the right coordinates to get to Elidikna. But the members of the gondola saw nothing but the wasteland left by the swarm. There was nothing left to fight here, so after wandering about for a bit, they came across an old man. This old man was the leader that conquered Lepusmet in the first place, and it turns out that he was a self-annihilator that forgot the actual annihilation of the self. But when he saw the memory bubble, he could finally remember, and he annihilated himself. After this, the swarm disaster came to a close, as Daisironth started to die and stopped propagating. This was the surface level of the story, but the Aeons had a hand in almost all of this, so let's take a closer look to hopefully understand a little bit better what was happening behind the scenes. First of all, the leader that traveled to Lepusmet was influenced by the whispers of Terminus the Finality to go to Lepusmet in the first place. However, I think that Aha also had a hand in this, since the text states he was awash in elation when he thought about Lepusmet. If joy had stopped him from actually questioning his existence, he wouldn't be able to annihilate himself yet. I don't know why Terminus had all of this in motion, but it seems like for some reason they needed Aena to lose their authority. My guess is that Aha also wanted Aena gone because they wanted nothing more than a chaotic universe where they are free to do whatever they want. The bounty hunter captain was most likely also influenced by Terminus, since she had nightmarish visions of the war between Ouroboros and Daisironth, hence why she started to hunt the insects down. During the Lepusmet massacre, Aena was there to observe what was happening, and since they didn't have the power to stop this disaster, they went to Qlipoth in order to warn them about the coming war. When Aena spoke with Qlipoth, they made a secret deal with each other. We don't know for sure what their deal was, but it seems like that Aena went to look for the Dreammaker who influenced Qlipoth's will, which is most likely Jipe the Harmony, since she is the Aeon most strongly connected to dreams. My guess is that Aena disappeared because she needed to unite the other Aeons to be able to restore the order of the universe, and since she had no other choice to do so, because she had to follow the path of order, she came too close to the path of harmony. Meanwhile, while Ouroboros and Daisironth were locked in their war, Fuli manifested and absorbed all of the memories of the planets that were lost by Ouroboros' attacks and stored them into itself. Right before Aena's disappearance, it seems like Aha also had a plan of their own, which involved Jipe, but since Aena now was part of Jipe, Aha had no other choice but to assist the other Aeons in bringing down Daisironth. So Aha sent the gondola to Lepusmet in order to restore the balance that the Self-Annihilator had broken. Then, when Qlipoth destroyed the propagation path, the Self-Annihilator was destroyed as well, and with the balance of all paths restored, the swarm disaster came to an end. So even with all of this story being slightly clearer, there are still a couple of things very vague. First of all, where did Ouroboros go? Well, the simulated universe literally refuses to answer what happened to them. And if we had to guess, it seemed like they disappeared at the same time Daisironth did. So maybe Who the Equilibrium did some interfering there. Or maybe it was something Aena did before she was absorbed. Then there is still the question, how did the Memory Hall get their hands on the Shadow Memory Bubble in the first place? There was no mention of a Memo Keeper stealing the true self from the Elidiknan leader. And lastly, we still have no idea why Terminus actually started the swarm disaster. A logical conclusion would be that Terminus wanted the end of the universe to come quicker, or that he really wanted Aena to be gone. But since Terminus never made a direct appearance, we are still left guessing the reason. I will probably make some more swarm disaster videos if we figure out more about what happened in the future. I hope this video at least helped a little bit in explaining the swarm disaster. Let me know what you think about the swarm disaster in the comments below. Have a good one. Bye!